people. If the people behave themselves and act peacefully, there was to be no restraint on the people, their personal behavior, their economic activities. It was there, the Constitution was there, it was written, it's explicit, it's very clear. It's there to restrain the government, not the people. But we as a country and as a people have failed the test. We have drifted a long way from our Constitution. We have made attempts. We have elected a lot of people to Washington who claim that we're going to have less taxes, less spending, less government, a strong national defense. We promise to take care of our veterans, and we come up short. And this is what we have to put our eye on the target, and the target is the limitation of government power. And people have lost confidence. I hate to have to say this, and I've been in this business a long time, and I was very pleased. I was involved in the Goldwater campaign and the Reagan campaign. Texas in 1976 for Ronald Reagan. And then in 94, actually I was in the Congress and left for 12 years and decided to go back after 1994, believing the Congress was ready to get down and start cutting. So I went back in the Congress in 96. But we still have come up short. We have come up short. And that is the crisis that we're facing. Not only for the party, but for the country. We are now on the verge of a bankruptcy. The bankruptcy is going to be measured by the value of our dollar. And the dollar is actually crashing. It's because of one reason. It's because we print too many dollars, and we have to restrain that. To get a handle on this and restrict the size and growth of government, we have to deal with monetary policy. That is an issue I've been dealing with since my first race in 1974, after we had the breakdown of the gold standard in 1971. So it's a very important issue. But if we have our way, if we have limited government, we should listen to the founders who knew something about runaway inflation and the destruction of the continental dollar. They said there would be no central bank, no authority for central bank, and there would be only gold and silver. Under those conditions, there would be no Federal Reserve system. Proper-sized government, and we were living within our means, and we couldn't print the money, and we weren't borrowing the money. Guess what? We wouldn't have an IRS or an income tax either. I think the people in this country are looking for guidance. Our campaign has done remarkably well. I was a very reluctant candidate a year and a half ago. But I have been very pleased with the numbers of people that have joined. Literally millions of people have joined. And they're very interested in this. And a lot of young people, new people, people who have never been in the Republican Party before, people who have dropped out. But they want to hear a message, a precise message of liberty. The reason why this message is resonating so well with the young people is they know what's going on a lot more than we give them credit for. They will bear the burden of a continuous war and a presence overseas. We're in 130 countries overseas. We have 700 bases overseas. We spend $1 trillion a year maintaining our empire, and it's unsustainable. That is why the dollar is going down, and that is why we owe foreigners now $2.5 trillion. Our national debt is nearly $10 trillion, and it's growing by exponential means. So we have to get control of this, or we will lose our liberties. Our liberties are being undermined on a daily basis. What we expect now from the government is to tell people what they do with their lives, what they do with their money. We have no concept. Now you're considered some unusual character if you talk about states' rights. Well, I have to believe in states' rights. A few years ago, John Ensign and Jim Gibbons were both in the House of Representatives. Now they're very famous people, and they've moved up a little bit. But we had a vote, and there were 3 votes opposed to it. The 2 of them and myself. It had to do with dumping waste in Yucca Mountain, in Nevada, which I oppose strongly. The critical there for me was the fact that the federal government shouldn't have this authority. Matter of fact, when I have my daydreams about how the country could have and should have been developed, I think about how Texas was developed. Private property ownership, no federal ownership of land. I think you should be in charge of your land. But our government has continued to grow, and we face a financial crisis, and we need to get a handle on it.
I'm not a McCain guy.
Oh, you're not a McCain guy.
We now have the assumption that we are going to have a national ID card, the real ID. In the state, it is all, you know, what they said after 9/11 that we had to be careful. But you don't want to register all the law-abiding American citizens. You don't want to do that in order to find out what's going on. We might just have more secure borders and do something else rather than register.
Yeah!
Has continued, and as I said, doing well and improving, even though we know exactly what the numbers are. But if the message is worthwhile, I mean, your vote can really count if you vote for limitation of government power and spending. Just remember, it wasn't that many years ago when our party accepted the idea that we didn't have to have a Department of Education. We don't need a Department of Education. We don't Now we're at the point where we finally get in charge and we double the size of the Department of Education. I don't think it's un-Republican for me or anti-Republican for me to stand up and say what we used to believe in. We used to believe in fiscal conservatism, balanced budget, limitation of government power. Need to be the party that increases the number of departments in Washington, D.C., increase the entitlement system. Today, the entitlement system, and this is another reason why the young people are very much aware of what's happening, it's about $60 trillion of obligations. Taxes at 90% won't pay for this. So a major problem is coming. And the only way we can restore this is to get the spending under control. And get the spending under control to reassure the markets and the world and those who hold dollars that we will maintain integrity with the dollars. But today, it doesn't look like that. Just look at what's happening, because right now we have a bill in the Congress proposed to spend a lot of money for more foreign expenditures overseas.
No!
And the Democrats come along and they say, aha, you need this money and you want the money because that's the conservative position. So the Democrats say, well, what we need are $30 more billion of entitlement spending at home. Now, my idea of compromise, and politics is the art of compromise, my idea of compromise is that we should be cutting both.
Yeah!
In Washington, they get together, and I predict they're going to increase both the spending overseas and the entitlement system at home, which is just going to be more harm to us, and we're going to have a lot more inflation. The standard of living of the average American is going down because we're paying for guns and butter over the past 10, 15 years. Just as we did in the 60s, we had to pay for it in the 70s. It's unsustainable, and we need to get back to our roots, believe it, have a message of limited government. You know, the Republican Party is the only thing right now I can see that might bring this back into order. Because now, since we have got a bad reputation, it looks like the Democrats are going to come in. I say, if we stand on principle, believe in it, and stand on the Constitution, we can revive this party. This past year has been a very important year for many of us. And one thing that I've noticed is still get very, very large crowds, especially on the campuses. It's not unusual. Just last week we had 1,500 at the campus at Penn State. And they are coming out, and they're very interested. But when I see the crowds, they're not typical. They're very diverse, because I have come to the firm conviction, more so than ever before in this past year, that when you talk about the Constitution, and you talk about freedom, and you talk about allowing people to run their lives as they choose, and allowing individuals to spend the money as they choose, that you don't become a threat to your neighbor, your friends, or your community. Because you don't want to control their lives. You don't want to control their pocketbook. It brings people together. They bring people together because what is unifying is the concept of freedom, the concept of liberty. And if we understand that, our goal will be exactly what the goal of the founders was. To answer the question, what should the role of government should be?